Welcome. For those of you just joining us, we'll get started in about four or 5 minutes. I'm seeing some familiar names. Welcome, everybody.
When's the last webinar, Laura, we did?
I don't think we did one for about 4 weeks. It was,
prior to the January.
yeah. No, we did the BEOC with Edie.
There you go. Okay, that was
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Feel free to use the chat to say hello and let us know where you're from and your interest in cyber. Hi, Priya Mahata. Good to see you here. And we have Bethany Elliott, our friend Bob Crow. Robert Traumassi, welcome. Everything is cyber, he says.
How true.
We have Dean from FHWA Illinois Division. Welcome, Dean. I recognize your name. Welcome to Mary Klett. We see you, Mary. Well, we don't really see you, but we see your name. Randy from CISA is here. Welcome, Randy. Feel free to use the chat to say hello. I see Ali Gagnon's on the line. Hi, Ali. Ali's checking in on his folks. I see Mary Lasky. Hey, Mary. All right, we'll get started in just a few seconds.
Wow. 4 o'clock already. All right.
All right, team, if you're ready, I say we begin and let others catch up as they arrive. All right, well, welcome everybody. Good afternoon. You've joined the All Hazards Consortium's webinar on cyber workforce development. We're really excited about this. Starts our cyber series. We have 3 events coming up, which I will show you in just a minute. But before we get into that, I just wanted to thank our speakers today. We have Shane Staley and Ralph Lay from Idaho National Laboratory. And also you'll see another logo on the bottom left of your screen for the AIM Council. They helped partner this event. I see some of its members on today, so we want to welcome you to today's webinar. And of course, welcome to all the regular All Hazards Consortium listeners. My name is Laura Johnson. I'm the Director of Conferences and Events for the All Hazards Consortium. And I just wanted to say a couple quick administrative things. First, we are going to ask, everyone is muted, and we are going to carve out some time at the end of the event for questions and answers. And that could either be sent through the chat box, through the Q&A, or if we have time at the end, we can even promote you to a co-panelist, which would allow you to unmute yourself and say hello. So I mentioned we have some upcoming cyber events. Right around the corner on May 4th, we have employee cyber hygiene strategies. And on May 18th, cyber cloaking. How do you hide from hackers? So both of those are complimentary. I will send you my email at the end of this webinar. And also I'll put it through the chat so you can reach out to me if you're interested, or just go on the ahcusa.org website and register for them. We'd love to have you there. All right, so now I'd love to introduce our Executive Director, Tom Moran. Tom?
Hi, Laura. Good afternoon, everybody. We have kind of a streak of cyber topics, which I'm very interested in. We, working throughout our stakeholders, we get ideas or nominations for different topics, whether it's research or whether it's some solution or it's a use case or whatever. So we try to vet those and then bring them to a national audience, if you will. We do record these. So we build a capacity over time. And the big vision from the board of the consortium is to build a community around this. So we're not all doing separate things, but we can come together at times and share some of the best practice. This is a great example, right? So today you're going to hear about an initiative going on within Idaho National Labs we saw as a tremendous opportunity for private sector owner-operators and state and federal agencies to know about, but to leverage downstream. So our certainly our employees are part of the critical infrastructure. If we don't know that, we do now after COVID, right? It says, somebody said to me, nothing's broken, but nothing's working. What happened, right? People. And this is a big one. So getting our employees up to speed on specific things related to their jobs and a way to test and validate that is very, very important. So really, really glad to have Ralph and Shane on board with us. So today you'll hear a little bit about the SICE. If you haven't registered for that, there's no cost. We invite you to join that. That's part of our trusted community. Step one is to register for that, and that'll put you on the list and get you invites to other things like that. And the SICE is a trusted framework, legal framework that protects information and identities from FOIA, competitive requests, non-operational requests. So that's why in Maryland, a 501c3 is exempt from FOIA. So we can have really no hold bar conversations and protect information. That's what the SICE does. So this is all part of that. So again, welcome. And I'm going to turn it, Laura, back over to you. We can introduce our speakers and get into our content. So thank you all for joining us.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Okay, so today's panelists, Ralph Lay, Department Manager, Workforce Development and Training, and his colleague, Dr. Shane Staley, Senior Industrial Control Systems, Cybersecurity Professional, Training Opportunities and Strategy Lead, both from Idaho National Laboratory. And I'm going to kick things over to Shane, but before you start, be sure to give us an introduction on yourself.
Okay. Shane,
Ralph, you want to start?
While you're kicking it over to our presentation, I'll start off. I'm as the slide says, I'm the department manager here at INL in National Homeland Security for Workforce Development and Training. We develop many different training programs. If you're familiar with Idaho National Labs whatsoever and their cybersecurity training, one course you may be familiar with is the 301 Red Blue training. That seems to resonate with a lot of people. People attend our training here from all over the U.S. and all over the world for our courses. So it's a well-known course. We do have mobile training courses, online training courses, but that's just a fraction of what we do. Shane, would you like to introduce yourself before we start off?
Yeah, sure. Shane Staley. I work with Ralph Lay, actually for Ralph Lay here at Idaho National Laboratory. It's been about 20 or 30 years in the industry. large portion of that at various government companies as well as private industry in cybersecurity and in information technology. And we have a passion for workforce development and helping get the water in the end of the road for individuals in this field. And hopefully what we can share today will be very helpful to the community.
So you can get in a present mode or? Okay, thanks, Tom and Laura, for this opportunity to speak to the group here on this one tool, this one model. Oh, back 1 second, Jane. For this model, this is just one of the products or deliverables we have here. Like I said, we do a lot of training for many different customers. Again, the 301 and other training courses, we have a particular and long-standing partnership with the Department of Homeland Security and CISA, great relationship and working with them. But we have many other customers as well. And this model, this tool, is a result of working with the different customers and really trying to identify what their needs are. And I hope that we're clear enough on what this capability can do for you all. And to kind of set this up to start with, many organizations, businesses that we talk to, they're inundated by entities that come to them with cyber-related training. Hey, you should take this. Hey, this is great training. Or they have a need, they know their businesses and know their employees need cyber-related training, cybersecurity training, and they're scratching their head of the catalogs of training that are out there. How do we know which courses to send our people to? What is the biggest bang for a buck? What's the return on investment if I send my some people to this training course or that training course? We get faced with this all the time. And this model is a result of how to cut through, if you will, the fog of what cyber training is out there and what an organization needs to become the most resilient and to keep their workforce very, quote unquote, cyber healthy, and to reduce the cyber risk. So let's start in the large scale first. Next slide, Shane. Let's start large scale first and set the foundation. We all know every day the world is getting more and more complicated. There's more and more interrelationships with cyber networks. That's the IT side and the OT side. Everything is interrelated. You can see we use the Seaport as a very easy way for an example, to demonstrate that. There's cranes, there's ships, there's rail cars, there's trucking systems, there's roads. Everything is interconnected. And everything has a cyber dependency today. One system goes down, many cascading failures result. So let's bring that closer into an individual business and organization. Next slide, please. So we take a typical business and we can see the operational and organizational functional areas. These are just generic ones: marketing, finance, operations. All these functions are necessary for a successful business to operate, to be successful. And then we look at the cyber dependencies below. You're all familiar with the LAN, the IT, the OT, the servers. All that connects, not just to the businesses, but as we find more and more day in, day out, to other services that used to be conducted and done by individual person is now done cyber through the internet. I'm sure you're all aware of some of the latest cyber incidents and threats that are out there. Malicious actors coming through building management systems, HVAC systems, to get into a business's system. These are the things that we're concerned with, and that businesses and organizations and entities come to us and say, how do I get my people to be more competent? How do I make sure that they're aware of what the threats are and what the mitigation actions are? So next slide. Let's go to the actual, again, we could list many different incidents and threats out there, but what we find is the weakest link is the human link. Software is designed to do specific cybersecurity uh, missions, goals. Hardware is the same way. The weakest link is the human and individual link. The threatscape, the cyber landscape changes on a daily basis, monthly basis, yearly basis, and the human link, that human person, the employee, the individual, continually needs refresher. What's the latest and greatest information, skill set that they need? And so that's what we're functioning on, and that's what we were building our Cyber Champ model on, how to address that. Let's go to the next slide. Thanks. So again, we deal with private sector entities, academia, government, many different customers come to us. And ask us these questions. We, as a national lab, we have a track record of creating specific tools to meet industry needs. CyberChamp is one of those tools that we're continually developing. We've spent several years developing and maturing this tool. It's still got a little ways to go. We've spent about 800K of our own lab's own money to invest in the development of this tool. And it's designed to answer the questions, as I started out with, of a business. As you can see on the right side, the structure of a notional business, everything from the CEO down to the workers and the sales folks. Each touches their own cyber network and system in their own different way. Many times they're not aware of how their actions impact another's in their own business. And these kind of businesses and organizations come to us and say, I know we need cyber training. We know we need it. Give us cybersecurity training. Give us that cyber training that we need. Of course, our questions back are, well, what kind of training are you looking for? What kind of training do you need? And they kind of give us that quizzical kind of look, and they, well, come on, stop joking with us. You're the national lab. You know what training we need. Just kind of, the stuff that you guys do and you folks do. Give us that cybersecurity training. Well, it's much more complicated than that because of, as we can see in that chart, everybody from the CEO all the way down to the sales persons and the workers, they all need a different level and different types of cyber training. Again, I go back to that statement. Look at those cyber related training catalogs. Do you know which ones they need? Where do we start? Where do we identify these specific training paths for each of these individuals? Again, that's the foundational aspect of what CyberChamp does. So let's go to the next slide, please. So of course we have to have pictures and relate all these concepts of different things. And we chose a brain. A brain is everyone has one. They all operate different functions of your body. They're different components of the brain, just like an organization has different components, different areas. They all specialize in different things, but they're linked by a neural network. And if that neural network isn't working together, isn't knowledgeable of the other's actions, it can go astray. It won't perform optimally. And so that's how we want to start with that. The look into CyberChamp and how to bring forth the correct cyber education and work paths for the individuals. Let's look at the next slide. So we look at our model, and I know this can be overwhelming, but if you look at the top, there's a kind of a long arrow that goes from left to right, shows phase 1 through 5. The 1 and 5 are next to each other because this is a cyclical process. So we start, this model actually starts with an organization, their current security operational readiness. We look at their programs of maturity, their policies and artifacts, practices observed, and then we look at their organizational security maturity level. Do they have just the policies? Is it just written, or are they actually implementing something? And then we look at the security competency health, which is basically the individuals that work in that organization under those policies and programs, and see what tasks, what do they actually do? We find the organizations we've gone to with this model, we find to a T, every organization's going, wow, we had no idea that these different individuals, besides their actual job role, they're touching all these other cyber job roles and functions that we had no idea. They probably need training in these other areas as well. So we go through again, security operational readiness. Where is the organization now? Where are their people now? What tasks are they actually doing? Cyber-related tasks. Where should they be educational or technically wise? And then we identify the different trainings based on their job roles and their tasks that they're doing. We identify existing training courses. Now, INLs, we have those in the mix. We have a broad catalog of any relative and relevant cyber training there. We link those courses to the individuals based on their tasks. The idea is then the organization can pick and say, now we see exactly what training those individuals need. Let's get them the training. And when their individuals have the cyber competencies they need, now let's go back to the security operational readiness. Do our policies, artifacts, practices actually match where we should be? This whole process reduces cyber risk. Let's go to the next slide. If we look at a linear phase, and because we are a workforce development training organization, we can overlay if you're familiar with training in the ADDIE process, analyze, design, develop, and implementation, and evaluate, we can take this process and overlay it this way as well. Analyze organizational security, design organizational structure, see what the design is, develop the competencies and roles and alignment to each of the different job roles, identify and implement a learning and development profile or a path, get those individuals that training, and then once they've got that, evaluate again the security levels. So again, linear way. Next slide, please. We know for a fact, it's proven that a workforce competency health, as we describe it, in this case, cyber competency health, has direct relationship to an organizational security operational readiness. The higher the competency health, the higher the security readiness. The more secure, the more resilient that organization is. Next slide. So if we look at it in the life cycle measurement, let's look at it this way. In phase one, when we take an initial snapshot of an organization and where they are in current competency. They could be in the reactive mode, for an example. They could be, as the circle on the phase one shows, it could be reactive mode. So it's okay. We put them through the Cyber Champ process, and because now we've increased their health, the operational, as we get back to phase 5 and we return back, we definitely see an appreciable gain in their operational readiness. So we've seen every time we've used this model organization, their increased operational readiness. So in this case, as you can see, that become to a proactive state. Next slide. So if we look at a healthy brain, we looked at the gray matter. It was there. We know they're connected. We know the different things are function. If we look at a healthy brain, this is your brain on Cyber Champ, to utilize a commercial that some of you that have been around as long as I have may remember. Here's your brain on Cyber Champ. This is the way it looks, very vibrant, great colors, neural connections are firing. You've got cyber-informed business execution, cyber alignment of accomplishment of businesses and aims and aspirations. The cyber-ready workforce supporting all these areas. You got cyber-competent business functions and cyber-ready business policies and plans. Again, this is what everyone strives and would like their business to have in the long term. I'm going to turn it over now to Shane to show you at least a component of this model, at least the component that most businesses direct us to first when they say, we really want to have you come and bring Cyber Champ to our organization so we can be this very vibrant and working brain and very vibrant cyber resilient company. They usually default to, well, don't do the phase one. Let's ignore our current policies and programs first. Let's go to see what our people actually need. They really want to cut to the chase, get them educated, and then go back and improve. So Shane, take it away, take over, and this is part of the model that we have software for, that we put organizations, individuals through, and with quite success.
Thanks, Ralph. Appreciate that. So this is the phase 3 when we talk about the implementing, at the organizational level, roles and responsibilities and what do people need. We kind of call it this getting to the water at the end of the row when it comes to cybersecurity. And this process is called a cyber champ, a job task analysis. And probably many of you are familiar with the job task analysis. And so what we do is we actually take an individual and we capture their job title and their job description. There's some other things that we capture also as we're going through this, but one of the key things here when we talk about education training mappings, it's very important to be able to talk apples to apples. If I go to company A and I see a position, and then I go to company B, they may have very similar job titles, but they may do very different things. And so as you go through this, it's very important to understand and map this back, because one of the goals of CyberChamp is to also provide back to industry and sectors these training profiles. So we capture the job title at the very onset of this job task analysis for data purposes. The next thing we actually do is we then go into the NIST Cybersecurity Workforce Framework, which is 800-181, if you're familiar with that document. And we take the categories from that. There's 7 categories. We also add an 8th category, which is based on research that we've done with Idaho State University, where we actually have gone through and profiled what for now is kind of missing in the NIST framework, since it's very IT focused. And we add a body of work of roles and tasking from the industrial cybersecurity side, so that when someone takes this task analysis, it's a little bit more rounded. So you choose from these categories. And then the goal here is there's many tasks that you can choose from. We're actually down selecting the number of tasks in the overall survey when we get to that portion as we go through each piece of this. Specialty areas, one more down select area. This is kind of a subsection of the category, kind of more of an area of concentrated work. And then in the case of the job task analysis, as the individuals are going through each one of these areas, the expectation is they're only selecting those things which they do in their daily work. This is actually done by an individual in the company. So when I say that this task analysis is being performed, this would be done by an individual in the organization, not by INL or anybody on the outside, but specifically somebody on the inside of the organization, really trying to understand what training they need. The next thing that the individual does is they would select the roles that are applicable to them. There's 52 roles that come from the NIST Cybersecurity Workforce Framework, and there's 5 additional industrial cybersecurity roles that we have added from the research body from ISU and INL. So 57 roles basically the individual can choose from, but once more, the goal is to down select into a task listing that is doable within what we field tested as 45 minutes to an hour. So what ends up being about 1,050 tasks when you kind of add them all up, the person is actually going through and selecting what they do on a daily basis in their current role and their job. And the goal here is to actually provide training based on their current tasking. So what we're really doing is we're trying to help provide that best return on investment, that best growth path for the individual, and what makes the most sense for the business because it's based on what they're already doing every day. And once again, as I mentioned earlier, because it's already aligned to the categories and specialty areas, we can do some analysis on this information on the backside that's very helpful for the individual and for the organization. I'll show you what that looks like. So the first thing we do is we take a look at the roles. And one of the most important things that we discovered in our research over the last 2.5 years on this model is that many times leaders and or sometimes human resources or others may not be aware of all the roles and responsibilities that individuals are already doing. I'll give you one prime example. We went to an energy provider company, and the chief engineer took this survey, and that pie chart looked like a color book. And this person had 12 roles they were performing. And the CSO or the CEO, I can't remember who now, turned to that individual who was basically a rock star and said, "Can you do all this?" And the person said, "Absolutely not." And everyone in the room was shocked. because the realization was that they couldn't. And so that actually led to this concept of, wow, we need to look at resource loading. We need to look at resource constraints. Is our resource spread done correctly when we talk in terms of how we're actually accomplishing our cybersecurity tasking? And so this is a really, really cool way of breaking this down and allowing the organization to look at the way they're tasking their cybersecurity roles. Now, in this case, another interesting point is that we've actually got 4 roles here, and you can tell by the task they've chosen that this person, although their role was a cyber analyst, there's 2 specific areas that actually really shined out here. So 17 tasks out of the 42 were in this multidiscipline language analyst. And then if you look at that number, that's 41% of that person's tasking. And then if you look at the purple one above it, the exploitation analyst, that was 24% of their role. So if you add those up, 65% of this person's job is really in 2 roles. And one of the things that we found really interesting as we've gone through this role analysis with organizations is it allows human resources to create a better profile for their positions. Sometimes they're not sure how to hire, how to maintain and really keep that cybersecurity workforce in place. And talking in terms of industry role, recognize industry roles and responsibilities is a nice way to be able to actually turn this around and even create a profile. So imagine doing this task analysis survey, not as an individual, but maybe with the idea that I want to create a composite for a role or responsibility in my organization, in which case that education training plan that comes out from this can really be focused on that maximum ROI, right? That return on investment that's so important. We already know that security in many cases, in most cases, is already overhead, right? So how can I get education training for security to my best benefit? We believe you can actually analyze these roles and target that training towards the role, which gives the best growth for that person and also the maximum ROI for the business because it's already stuff they're doing every day. So in addition to analyzing the roles, we're going to take a look at the secret sauce of this method. And we've mapped every one of the tasks to Bloom's taxonomy of progressive learning. So there's something called the Bloom's wheel. So by mapping each of those tasks to a learning level, think in terms of 100 to 500 learning levels. These are kind of the competencies that are associated with those learning levels, right? Awareness to design. So in the CyberChamp competency realm, we've got the job task analysis competency alignment that came from the survey. And it shows here that this individual from the tasking they have chosen, 45% of the tasks they've chosen are in that middle tier, or that primary target for their training should probably be in the maintain level. And then you look at the secondary offering, that's really a secondary target for their training. It's got that implementation layer. So the goal here is not to be prescriptive. You can provide any training you want for an individual. But from an ROI perspective, when you talk in terms of education training and just the number and the plethora of courses that are out there, it may be important to consider that when you pay for training for this individual and allow them to leave their job or to do other things to improve, to help the organization, that you have some focuses for competency in doing that. Because any of us can train to train, but really that goal in the end is competency, right? Becoming and remaining competent. And so having this security competency function alignment is really huge. It allows you to have that focus and that initiative that, as I mentioned, gives that person the best growth and maximum ROI. Now, once we have targeted roles and we actually have this competency alignment, we can then take a look at, okay, what training options do I have for my person? Well, this is an opportunity for an individual to go to their manager to do this, and then go and talk knee to knee with their individuals. And you can actually address, okay, based on, and this is just a subset of each of these lists, but from the survey that was done and from the training repository that we have, I think we've got around 1,500 courses now in our repository. So what you can do is say, you know what, 45% of this individual's tasking came in that maintain area. What courses can they take to become and remain competent? And so I can sit down and look at this. I've got cost in here. I've got the time that the course takes away from work. I've got the format. Is it online? Is it on ground? And I can actually, take a look at this and then build out a training plan, a learning path for this individual in their current job that makes sense for them and also makes sense for the business. And I show maintain here and then implement both those major paths. And And obviously the tool gives you all of the training. So if you still felt that awareness was important, if you still felt that support or design was a big aspect for this individual, you can still look at those training courses. But this is kind of the targeted competency alignment that we think is really important to be able to provide the best bang for the buck. And I'm going to turn it back over to Ralph to close us out here. But that does it for the presentation of the phase 3 model.
And so Shane kind of undersells all the work behind here. If anyone, I'll just put it out, if anyone on the call would like a deeper dive behind the methodology, please feel free to reach out to us. There's much more behind it, but that's, in the time we have, that's the pretty high level simplistic look. So return on investment for a business organization, Shane covered a lot. Basically, what training should I send my folks to? That's one of the bottom lines, but you can see increasing security operational readiness and the competency health of your individuals. I can read all these bullets, but I don't think I need to. I think these are pretty obvious. Again, the main thing is, and I think everybody's aware of, cyber threats are going to continue to evolve. The cyber threat landscape is always changing, always morphing. Keeping your folks as best possible up to speed on the latest and greatest information, education, and training is one of the biggest return on investments that we see. Again, I don't think I need to go through here any farther. Next slide. Let's go to what we're asking and what we're looking to do. So this really isn't an ask. This is kind of letting you know what we're doing. We've spent, again, a lot of program development money on the labs already to develop the tool to where we're at right now. What we don't necessarily have is always the direct links to all the industry partners that are interested in partnering with us to take a look at their organization, to share the investment. Again, we have this model. The lab is always interested in spinning these types of programs and tools out to private sector industry. But we're looking at, based on some of the next steps for us, some larger partners as we go forward to develop what Shane kind of alluded to as we use CyberChamp, or organizations or associations or industries use the CyberChamp model, they can start developing, and we can assist their industry best practices. Again, if we continue to do large energy corporations or energy providers, obviously it would lead to, you start to see the same training paths and same training programs spitting out for the same job roles as a best practice. That's what we're looking to do, but you can utilize it for your own company. But again, we're looking for partners to see who wants to help develop those, either with us or for your own associations on your own. Our next steps, we have something called the Idaho Cyber Research Project, something Shane and I are leading here in Idaho, kind of using Idaho as that petri dish for additional industries. We're limited to the sectors that are actually already willing to partner and want us to come in and help with their issues, their workforce development training issues. We're bringing on over 20 interns to help us do some of the research and some of the research legwork, but we're going out to industries across Idaho: healthcare, banking and finance, water and energy, to start with, implementing CyberChamp as one of the tools to first off get an idea of what their needs are for training. But anyone familiar with cyber workforce development issues, there are many past just identifying what the needs of an organization are. We're working closely with the universities and colleges in our state as well, because they're scratching their head along with us as we talk to industry, they're saying things like, I just hired this young person out of University X, and it still takes us 18 months to 2 years to train them up before they're useful in these cyber tasks. Obviously, there's something wrong. Academia realizes that. What are they teaching or what are they not teaching? What are those gaps? Part of the usefulness of the CyberChamp tool is to identify that, because we do go to organizations and industry and even government entities that when we get done with the CyberChamp analysis, there are no training courses or training to facilitate what their needs are. We can either help create that training curriculum, or we can find the entities that can help them do that. So there's a lot of side benefits of that. We also have a lot of private sector businesses are giving us their tools they think are solutions also for how do you convert the results of CyberChamp, meaning now that we know our job roles or where the different jobs touch cyber, how do we advertise for the next person we want to hire in that job role? Well, now we've got a breakdown of what their tasks are. We can convert those into knowledge, skills, and ability, and actually we're helping with some of these tools we have create new types of job postings for cyber positions. So those are a lot of offshoots to this effort. It's been quite exciting, and those are the things we're doing this summer to really build out this tool. But in the meantime, we still would like larger industry partners, again, to start developing those best practices, creating dashboards. A lot of companies come to us and say, I don't need just a training program or a plan. We have those. What's that dashboard that we can show workforce development and training and the benefits we're seeing versus our business resilience? So looking at that as well. Again, looking at research partners, looking at partners that and businesses that potentially want to take this tool, take it on themselves in their own industries and spin it off themselves. I think that's about it. Shane, did I miss anything?
Shane, you're on mute.
Wow, how long does it take to unmute? So yeah, no, I think you hit it. I did answer one question in the forum, so that was asked, but I don't know if Laura, Tom, if you want to cover that, or I can. It's up to you guys.
Yeah, I got a bunch. Shane, your camera's got a great shot of your chest. You may
Oh, sorry. I moved my laptop down to unmute my darn.
No.
Okay, thanks.
Ralph, just a couple of questions. One, what long-term, do you see licensing this out for further development? Is that an option? That was first
Yeah.
question.
Absolutely. Again, that's what the lab loves to do, license it out as the option.
Okay, so that's first question. The second question is, how do you customize it? Can you give us an example? How do you customize this to a specific company, right? Some larger companies have their own culture and rules and guidelines that operate, and they're a big international company. How do you see it adopting or adapting this to that framework? Can you talk about that process for a minute? Because there's no one size fits all, as you know. Right? These have to be foundation, but then they got to be customized. How do you see that working?
That's a great question. I think Shane can probably answer that better on some of the different guidelines we've used and different what do you call flavors of CyberChamp that we've actually created. Shane.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the CyberChamp is a model and a process that's meant to be customizable. And the way that can float for industry, for example, in manufacturing, maybe the standard we measure against is ISA 62443. So the model is mapped already to that, right? The model is mapped against CMMC. The model could be mapped to the regulatory voluntary standard that you espouse to, and that measurement can be specific to the organization, right? So the goal is to not to bring a tool in that's specific and prescriptive, but that works for your needs. So the idea is that you come in with, what do you need? And then let's see if your people are competent to accomplish those goals, whatever those needs are, right? And to Ralph's point, one of the things that I think is a struggle is, okay, I use HIPAA. Okay, no problem. We've mapped HIPAA to CyberChamp measurements. Let's see if you have the people and the roles that you need, and the competencies in the areas. And then we go into an organizational structure and we talk about the alignment of the competencies. So the model is not meant to always be, every single piece, right? like to Ralph's point, maybe you only want to do something now and you can do other things later. So the customization of the model and the process are very unique to the organization. Hope that answered the question.
Great. Laura, we can open up for questions here from the group. I just have one more. What, as you're working with the private sector, what do you see as their biggest concern, right, around this, right? And that could be, some of the things in corporate, depending on the company and the industry, some are really highly regulated, right? Some aren't. But most of the ones that have high risk, high customer, high impacts are. What do you see as some of their biggest fears that that they're trying to wrestle with, as they deal with this topic of employee, cyber training?
Good question. Shane, if you got an answer.
I think the biggest one that I throw out, I hate to answer the question, but they don't. Oftentimes, what we discover is organizations don't know what they don't know.
Right.
When we go in and actually analyze their profile of their individuals, it's a little bit revealing that they are maybe not aware that they're not aligned necessarily for success. So one of the goals here is, and somebody asked the question in the forum, is this a self-assessment? It's intended to get to that point. We're not quite there, but the idea is the self-discoveries that happen. We were sitting at a table one day and the organization was discussing as if we weren't even there, because they were realizing some improvements that came from just understanding what people were doing in their own organization. So I think the key answer to your question, Tom, is helping an organization know what they don't know to be able to solve problems that maybe they don't realize they even have, especially when it comes to workforce development competency, because this is such a hard question when it comes to general training, but then add the cyber realm, it becomes even more interesting. So.
Yeah, and I hypothetically, this is one of those topics you don't really want people to know you got issues. You know what I mean? So this is kind of within the family. It's a big issue,
Right.
but they certainly have to address it. And it's how do you do that in an environment that's safe, that you can plan, that you can do that. I think that was kind of what our working group from the SICE saw was an opportunity to build a community of people around this where they can plan together, maybe develop those common things, because it's a big issue and it's going to keep growing as more and more people come into involvement. How about from the state perspective? Can you speak to any conversations or use cases you've worked on with states, or have states have expressed an interest in this issue?
So we have a community of practice that involves multiple states across the US and actually international that are expressing a lot of the same workforce development and training issues. Internal specific to Idaho, the governor and the state CISO and a lot of the workforce development committees, state level committees, businesses for education, are all extremely interested in. They call CyberChamp and this effort the operationalization of everything they're talking about. There's a lot of chatter on, we need to do this, we need to find the solution, we need to see how we can address these issues. They're actually looking at this as the operational mechanism. This is how we can start, how we can actually take the next step and not just keep talking about it.
Yeah, and one of the comments was shared with us was how do we coordinate industry business on some common things and give that feedback back to the universities, right? I mean, that's the farm system,
right?
And that feedback loop is really important. As Kent Kilda, the chair of the SICE working group, says, it needs to be relevant, right? It needs to be relevant to operational use and have impact. And I know the states are wrestling with the same issue regards to people. How do we train those folks within government as well, right? Okay.
And the other aspect is the states are really now becoming aware of not internships, but apprenticeships. So business apprenticeships, especially the cyber business apprenticeships, that's the other direct feedback. Organizations we've gone in and done worked with for a CyberChamp evaluation, they bring in apprentices. And as they start working, that's also the direct feedback link, validating what the CyberChamp model and evaluation is finding back to the universities they're still taking courses from. Hey, are you going to teach us about this? I need this in my business.
Yeah. Last question I have, and we talked about this before, can you speak to what's unique, right? There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of training all the time, webinars. I get hit a lot. Good stuff. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just a lot of noise, right? What do you see, Ralph or Shane, that is unique about this that you'd like the private sector to understand?
There's a couple tools that are close to this type of analysis, actually linking, identifying down to the individual level in an organization what a training and education path is. This is the only one that we've seen, and not to toot our own horn, we're a national lab. If we can find a better one, we're all about that. But this is the one that actually works not just for ICS, and that's kind of our big deal. We've added that ICS, that OT component to the Nice NIST framework that's catching up to give that holistic look for a business, not just IT specific. Shane, what did I miss?
No, I think that's great. I also think one of the things that we struggle with is we looked for that tool, right? Before we created our own. When people say we have training, and one of the things that we discovered is that oftentimes, until you do that organizational analysis, until you understand what makes the business tick, what are the business needs, before you go and figure out training, right? So what we have often is somebody comes and says, hey, manager, I need training. It's a $7,000 course. Do you really need it, or do you want it? And so, is that a discussion we should have? And how do I understand that? By applying the model the way that it's applied, and I don't know of another tool that does it in this way, you're actually taking a look at the organizational needs as a primary focus before you go and assess the training, or in conjunction with it, right? So it's unique in that way as well, I think.
Okay, very good. Or I don't know if people are unmuted or not, but this would be a good time maybe to promote them up and get some dialogue going. I had one question. What is the consortium's interest in this? Okay, very simple. Our role is to do what we always do, is to build communities of states and industry around specific topics. This is a topic, and look at use cases and find solutions, plural, right? What are some of those? And so the use case here was developed last year is employee preparedness, right? How do we prepare existing and future employees in the private sector and states to better understand their role in the cyber ecosystem, if you will, right? So our job is really find and build communities of people around these use cases. So whether it's electric or comms or food or fuel or supply chain or finance, doesn't really matter. But it's these types of dialogues where we start that if we go. So certainly INL has thought enough of this to put almost $1 million of their own resource into it. Not to mention the brain trust, I think, that's available through the partnerships you guys have already developed, right? So that's kind of our role here, is to look at how do we build community around this, and maybe use this for planning, for training, for exercise, or something. We can leverage this investment to, one, improve planning and coordination and training, but also to bring exposure and possible future investment into this to make it bigger and broader. So Laura's promoting everybody up. So if you want to go on camera and just introduce yourself and any feedback you'd like to provide to us, or questions you might have, either way is fine.
Shane and Ralph, we did have one question. If you would be willing to share your slide deck, if you want to email that to me, I can email it to the audience.
Okay, and let's take a look at that. I don't see a reason why we wouldn't, but we'll take a look.
Okay, and for listeners on the line, we will, if they give us permission to do that, we'll send that, but we'll also send a copy of the recording so that you can either rewatch the link or send it to your colleagues and peers. Okay, and anyone want to unmute themselves and ask a question or just introduce yourself?
If
Go ahead,
I may,
Tom.
Bob Crow,
Oh, Bob Crow. Hey, Bob.
just wanted to say thank you. This was really informative. Not my area of expertise, but if we're able to get our hands on that information, I'll be passing that along to the people that need to see it. But that is a very good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We're gonna, like I said, this is recorded, and we will provide this out. I want to thank Ralph and Shane for joining us. This is one of many conversations we've had and will continue to have as we go forward. And of course, Laura, thanks for pulling this together. I'll turn it back over to you for some wrap up, and we might end a few minutes early today. So
Yeah.
thanks again.
Okay, so as a reminder, our next event on cyber hygiene is May 4th at 4 p.m. Eastern, and then that follows by another cyber event on cyber cloaking, how to hide from hackers, and that's May 18th, lunch and learn at noon, and we're working with our partner Reprivita on that event. So again, these are free. Feel free to register. Tom, did you want to?
Yeah, one last thing I forgot to mention, if you have an interest in being part of the use case development committee on this, just go to siceusa.org and register. Okay, we'll know that's coming from this webinar. And we'll make sure that we get you plugged in. So I think this is one of those, Ralph and I were talking about, this is one of those things that can touch many itches, right? Just this very broad topic area. It seems like one time you create a use case for something and it gives birth to 3 others. So
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So
One
anyway.
step at a time, Tom. So I'd like to thank Shane and Ralph for your time today and putting this together, and for being supporters of the All Hazards Consortium. So thank you to you both. And thanks to all of our listeners.
Thank you for your coordination and efforts. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah.